The alien sovereign descended from her starship like a shimmering vision, cloaked in ethereal light, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the vicinity. Crowds gathered, eyes wide with wonder and trepidation, as she stepped onto Earth for the first time. Her silver skin glistened under the sun, while intricate patterns pulsed with life across her form. She surveyed her surroundings with an air of authority and purpose. The ambassador, a seasoned diplomat named Michael, felt a mix of awe and skepticism. As he approached her, he had spent years negotiating peace treaties and forging alliances, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment, as he stood before an otherworldly being whose intentions were still shrouded in mystery. Her name was Queen Lyra, and she spoke with a voice that resonated deep within him, a melodic yet powerful tone that seemed to vibrate in the air. Queen Lyra wasted no time with pleasantries. She announced that her planet faced an impending crisis, one that could plunge her people into chaos and destruction. Her gaze locked onto Michael as she explained the urgency of her request. She required a human crew to accompany her on a diplomatic mission to an allied planet that had been destabilized by a recent betrayal. Michael felt a surge of disbelief coursing through him. Who was she to insist on such a thing? And why humans? Why not her own people who possessed advanced technology and abilities? Surely they could handle this without involving the fragile humans. Yet as he listened to her words, he could sense the gravity of her situation. She detailed the treachery of a rival faction that threatened the fragile alliance her people had cultivated over centuries. If they did not act swiftly, the alliance would crumble, and with it the hope of peace across the galaxy. She believed only humans could navigate the complexities of diplomacy and emotion that were often overlooked by her own people. A murmur spread through the crowd as Michael considered her words. The weight of her request hung heavy in the air. The skepticism of the gathered leaders was palpable, yet he felt an undeniable pull toward her vision. A flicker of excitement ignited within him, the thought of embarking on an interstellar journey filled with danger and diplomacy. He cleared his throat, addressing the crowd as he weighed the implications of her request. They could not ignore the opportunity to forge a connection with an alien civilization. He recognized the potential for unity across the stars, but the risks were equally daunting. Queen Lyra observed him intently, her eyes glowing with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. She seemed to sense his hesitation and took a step closer, as if to bridge the gap between their worlds. Her presence was magnetic, her aura compelling. As the debate among the leaders intensified, Michael knew he had to act decisively. He stepped forward and proposed a compromise. A small team of volunteers would accompany the sovereign, but they would require assurance of their safety and a detailed plan of action. The crowd fell silent as Queen Lyra smiled, a knowing smile that hinted at her appreciation for his boldness. She nodded slowly, acknowledging the wisdom of his proposal, while the atmosphere crackled with tension. Excitement began to seep in. The stakes were high and time was of the essence, but in that moment a connection was forged between human and alien, a glimmer of hope amid uncertainty. As Michael glanced back at his fellow leaders, he could see their apprehension melting into intrigue and curiosity. This was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange hue across the sky, Michael gathered the assembled leaders in a dimly lit conference room. He could feel the weight of their collective uncertainty pressing down like a heavy shroud. They sat around a large oval table, glancing at one another with skepticism and curiosity. Michael took a deep breath, focusing on the task ahead. He addressed the room with conviction, explaining the urgency of Queen Lyra's mission and the implications it held for humanity, their chance to be part of something greater than themselves, to engage in interstellar diplomacy that could reshape their understanding of the universe. One leader, a general named Hargrove, slammed his fist on the table, his voice booming with frustration. "We cannot just send our people into the unknown without understanding the risks. They could be walking into a trap," he argued, his face flushed with anger. Michael held up a hand to quell the rising tension. He understood the general's concerns, but pointed out that the galaxy was vast and filled with wonders and dangers alike. This was an opportunity to establish alliances that could secure Earth's future. A scientist named Dr. Chen interjected, "What do we really know about this queen? She may have her own agenda. We need to conduct thorough research before proceeding." She cautioned, her brow furrowed in thought. Michael nodded, acknowledging the validity of her concerns, but he also felt an undeniable pull toward the unknown. The potential for discovery outweighed the risks in his mind. He glanced at the window, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear behind the horizon. Finally, after much deliberation, they reached a consensus to send a small team of 6 volunteers, including Michael himself. The rest of the leaders remained wary, but agreed to support the mission on the condition that it would be well documented and that they would maintain communication throughout. With the decision made, Michael felt a surge of adrenaline course through him. He could hardly contain his excitement as he gathered the selected volunteers, each chosen for their unique skills and perspectives. They were an eclectic mix: an engineer, a medic, a linguist, a security officer, and 2 scientists. As they prepared for the journey, they spent hours discussing strategy and protocols. Each member shared their expertise. The engineer mapped out the ship's systems, while the medic focused on health and safety precautions. The linguist studied the alien language and culture, learning to communicate effectively with Queen Lyra. When the time came to meet the Sovereign again, Michael felt a rush of anticipation. He and his team approached the starship as its sleek metallic exterior shimmered under the artificial lights. The entrance opened, revealing a breathtaking interior filled with advanced technology and alien artistry. Queen Lyra awaited them, her presence both calming and electrifying. She greeted each member of the team with a knowing smile, as if she could sense their apprehension and excitement. She spoke of the journey ahead, emphasizing the importance of their mission and the bonds they would form along the way. As they boarded the ship, Michael marveled at the intricate designs that adorned the walls. He felt a sense of wonder and trepidation wash over him. This was truly a leap into the unknown. Once aboard, the Sovereign activated the ship's systems, and a low hum filled the air. Michael's heart raced as they prepared for takeoff. He glanced back at Earth through the viewport, watching the planet shrink beneath them with each passing moment. As they entered hyperspace, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursed through him. They were leaving behind everything familiar, embarking on a journey that could redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. Little did they know the trials and tribulations that awaited them would test their resolve and change the course of their lives forever. As the starship soared through the vastness of space, the crew settled into their roles, eager yet anxious about the journey ahead. Michael found himself sitting across from Queen Lyra in the ship's spacious command center. The soft glow of control panels illuminated her features, casting shadows that danced across her silver skin. Queen Lyra's demeanor was a blend of regal confidence and palpable vulnerability as she engaged with the crew, explaining the intricate dynamics of her home planet, Eloria. She spoke of its vibrant culture and the deep connections her people shared with one another. Her voice resonated with passion as she recounted tales of unity and collaboration. Yet beneath the surface lay a darker narrative, a sense of urgency that fueled their mission. She revealed the rival faction known as the Vornax, a militant group hell-bent on seizing power and destabilizing the fragile alliances that had held Eloria together for centuries. Michael listened intently, absorbing her words, feeling the weight of her trust in him and his team. This was no longer just a diplomatic mission. It was a chance to prevent catastrophe for an entire civilization. As the days passed, the crew began to forge their own bonds with one another. The engineer named Sarah immersed herself in the ship's technology, fascinated by its advanced systems. She often worked alongside Lyra, who guided her with an effortless grace. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen and the medic Emily exchanged ideas about medical practices between their cultures. They were surprised to find common ground despite the vast differences in biology. They shared laughter and insights while deepening their understanding of one another. However, tensions simmered just beneath the surface when tensions flared between the security officer Marcus and one of the scientists, Zoe. She often challenged his methods, questioning his assumptions about the alien threat. Marcus was brash and protective, while Zoe was logical and analytical. Their debates sparked heated discussions that often drew in the rest of the crew. One evening during a tense dinner gathering, Marcus's frustration boiled over. He slammed his fist on the table, declaring, "We shouldn't trust her," pointing at Lyra. "How can we know she isn't manipulating us? How can we be sure this isn't all part of some grand scheme?" The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to Lyra, who maintained her composure. A flicker of sadness crossed her face as she responded, "We have all been shaped by our experiences. The trust we build may take time, but it is a bridge we must cross together if we are to succeed." Her words resonated with Michael, who recognized the truth in her statement. He felt a surge of determination to unify the crew, to push past their differences, and embrace their shared mission. As the days turned into weeks, they encountered challenges that tested their resolve. A sudden meteor shower forced them to engage in evasive maneuvers, as Sarah worked feverishly to recalibrate the ship's systems, while Lyra provided strategic guidance, each crew member contributing their skills in perfect harmony. In those moments, Michael saw the crew transform, their bonds strengthening as they faced adversity together. They were no longer just individuals, but a united team driven by a common purpose. But even amid their growing camaraderie, a shadow loomed as they approached Aloria. A sense of foreboding settled over the ship, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and anxiety. Queen Lyra gathered the crew in the command center, her expression grave. As they prepared for the impending negotiations, she emphasized the importance of their roles, reminding them that their humanity was their greatest asset. This mission was not merely about diplomacy, but about understanding, compassion, and hope in the face of conflict. Michael felt a surge of pride as he looked at his crew, each member ready to face the unknown with unwavering resolve. They were on the brink of something monumental, a chance to reshape the future, not just for Aloria, but for humanity. As well as the ship emerged from hyperspace, revealing the stunning beauty of the planet below. As the vibrant colors of Aloria filled the viewport, Michael knew that whatever lay ahead would challenge them in ways they could not yet imagine, but together they would face it, all united in purpose and strength. As the starship descended toward Aloria, the vibrant landscape unfolded beneath them, a tapestry of lush greenery and shimmering rivers interspersed with majestic mountains rising toward a sky painted in hues of lavender and gold. Michael felt a mix of awe and anxiety. Queen Lyra stood beside him, her expression reflecting the weight of her homeland's fate. Her eyes sparkled with hope, yet were clouded with concern as they approached the designated landing site, a sprawling city that thrived at the intersection of nature and technology. As they touched down, the crew felt the ship settle with a gentle hum. The door opened, revealing a delegation of Alorian officials awaiting their arrival. They were adorned in elaborate garments woven with luminescent fibers that pulsed softly in the fading light. Lyra stepped forward, gracefully acknowledging her fellow leaders with a dignified nod. As she introduced Michael and the rest of the crew, the officials exchanged curious glances, some with skepticism, others with intrigue. Michael took a deep breath, grounding himself in the gravity of the moment. He had come to represent humanity on a foreign world, to engage in a delicate dance of diplomacy, and he felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on him. The delegation escorted them through the bustling streets of the city, where towering structures intertwined with sprawling gardens, creating a breathtaking contrast of nature and architecture. The air was filled with the scent of exotic flowers, and the sounds of laughter and music wafted through the atmosphere. As they entered the central hall, a magnificent structure adorned with intricate carvings and shimmering crystals, Lyra led the way, her presence commanding respect. The hall was filled with representatives from various factions, each vying for influence and power. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Lyra addressed the assembly, her voice steady and resolute. She outlined the threat posed by the Vornax, detailing their aggressive tactics and the urgency for unity among the factions. Michael watched as her words sparked reactions within the crowd. Some leaned forward, eager to listen, while others crossed their arms, their expressions skeptical. It became clear that not everyone was willing to set aside their differences. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall, imposing Alorian with a deep scar across his cheek. He introduced himself as Commander Tarek, a leader of the Vornax faction. His presence radiated hostility and defiance. Lyra's composure remained unshaken as Turek challenged her intentions, accusing her of manipulating the situation to regain power for herself. The tension in the room escalated as voices rose in heated debate. Michael felt a surge of adrenaline as he realized this was the moment they had prepared for, the culmination of their journey. He stepped forward, drawing on his training and the trust he had built with the crew. He proposed an alternative to their escalating conflict. "What if instead of accusations and blame we sought a solution together?" he urged, directing his gaze toward both Lyra and Tarek. The room fell silent as he spoke, hoping to bridge the divide. He suggested a series of open dialogues where each faction could voice their concerns and aspirations without fear of reprisal. His words hung in the air, a plea for understanding and cooperation. The atmosphere shifted slightly as Lyra looked at Michael with gratitude, while Tarek's brow furrowed in contemplation. After a moment of tension, he replied with a reluctant nod, indicating a willingness to engage in dialogue. As discussions unfolded throughout the hall, Michael facilitated conversations, encouraging representatives to share their perspectives. The room buzzed with a mix of hope and skepticism, yet slowly walls began to crumble. Emotions ran high as stories of loss and fear emerged, each faction revealing their humanity and struggles they had faced in the wake of the Vornax threat. Michael witnessed the power of empathy in action as barriers began to dissolve. The crew's presence began to change the dynamics. They provided fresh perspectives and alternative solutions, grounded in collaboration rather than conflict. Unity began to take root. But just as progress seemed within reach, an alarm blared throughout the hall, casting a shadow of dread over the proceedings. A projection flickered to life, showing Vornax ships approaching the city. The moment of vulnerability transformed into a crisis as Tarek's faction prepared for battle against a common enemy. In the sky, Michael's heart raced, realizing the true test of their mission was only beginning. Together they had to respond not just as factions, but as allies facing a threat that could tear their worlds apart if they didn't unite now. As chaos erupted, the crew knew that their journey had transformed into a fight for survival, where the stakes were higher than ever, and the bonds forged would be tested in ways they never anticipated. As the alarm blared and the projection of the Vornax ships loomed large in the hall, panic swept through the gathered factions. Michael felt the tension in the air shift from hopeful dialogue to a palpable fear of impending conflict. The vibrant colors of Eloria seemed to fade into shadows as dread filled the room. Queen Lyra stood resolute, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the situation. She quickly took charge, urging calm among the delegates. Her voice rose above the chaos, reminding them of the urgency to act together rather than succumb to fear. Michael could see the flicker of determination in her gaze as she turned to Tarek. He could feel the tension between them, but in that moment, there was a shared understanding. They both knew that unity was their only chance for survival. "We must mobilize our forces," she declared, her voice steady. "We cannot allow the Vornax to divide us any further. This is our opportunity to stand together." Tarek reluctantly nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. Despite the history of animosity between their factions, Michael sensed a fragile alliance forming as delegates began to organize into teams. The crew quickly sprang into action. Michael and his team were assigned to assist with communications and logistics, while Lyra coordinated the defensive strategies. The atmosphere crackled with urgency as they prepared to face the incoming threat. In the command center, Sarah worked alongside Elorian engineers to enhance the ship's defensive capabilities, while Emily checked medical supplies, ensuring they were ready for any casualties that might arise. Dr. Chen and Zoe collaborated on a plan to utilize the ship's technology for crowd control in case of an emergency, while Marcus led a team to secure the perimeter around the city, ensuring civilians were evacuated to safety. As the Vornax ships drew closer, Michael felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He had never been in a situation like this where diplomacy and warfare intertwined, yet he knew they had to remain focused. Queen Lyra's leadership shone through as she rallied the factions, encouraging them to set aside their differences and focus on their shared goal of defending Eloria. She emphasized the importance of protecting their home for the sake of future generations. The time for negotiation had passed, and now it was time to fight. But even in the face of danger, Michael saw the flicker of hope in the eyes of the Aelorian people. They were ready to defend their way of life together. As the first Vornax ships descended, firing volleys of energy blasts toward the city, chaos erupted in the streets. Michael watched as the Aelorian defenses engaged the attackers, their ships soaring through the sky with remarkable agility. Michael and his crew operated the communication systems, relaying vital information to the defenders. As they coordinated their efforts, they marveled at the fluidity with which the Aelorians worked together. It was a dance of technology and instinct. But as the battle intensified, Michael noticed a shift in strategy from the Vornax. Their ships began to split into smaller groups, targeting key infrastructure around the city. They aimed to cripple the Aelorian defenses. Realizing the threat, Michael relayed the information to Lyra and Tarek. They quickly devised a counter-strategy, deploying Aelorian ships to intercept the smaller Vornax units. But the clock was ticking. As the battle raged on, the crew's hearts pounded in sync with the chaos around them, each explosion resonating with the weight of lives at stake. Yet amid the turmoil, Michael found strength in his team. They worked seamlessly together, united by purpose and determination. Just when it seemed the tide was turning against them, a surge of energy erupted from the Aelorian ships, illuminating the sky with brilliant colors. They unleashed a powerful defensive mechanism designed to shield their city from harm. The Vornax ships faltered momentarily, but it was clear this battle would not be won easily. As the enemy regrouped and pressed on, Michael felt the stakes rise higher each moment. The fear of failure hung heavily in the air. In that crucible of conflict, amid the blaring alarms and the cries of warriors, Michael realized the true essence of their mission. It was about more than just survival. It was about forging a bond strong enough to withstand the fires of war. As the Vornax pressed their assault, the crew knew they had to rally together, not only for their lives, but for the future of Aeloria and humanity, united against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. As the battle raged outside the command center, the air was thick with tension and the smell of burning debris. Michael's heart raced as he coordinated with the crew to maintain communication and control over the Aelorian defenses. The situation was dire, but there was no time for despair. With the Vornax ships regrouping and launching coordinated attacks, Michael understood they needed a bold plan to turn the tide. They couldn't simply rely on defensive strategies. They had to take the fight to the enemy. Gathering his team in a corner of the command center, Michael laid out his thoughts. We need to disrupt their formations and draw them away from the city. We can't let them target our critical infrastructure. Sarah nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration, her engineering mind already working on possible solutions, while Zoe chimed in with suggestions about exploiting the Vornax's own technology. We could use the ship's cloaking system to sneak in closer to their flagship. If we can disable it, we can throw their entire operation into disarray, she proposed, her voice laced with urgency. Michael felt a rush of hope at her suggestion. If they could disable the flagship, it would be a significant blow to the Vornax morale and strategy. He turned to Lyra and Tarek, who were deep in conversation, their voices a low murmur. Lyra glanced at Michael, sensing his determination. She agreed, we must act swiftly if we are to regain control over this battle. With a plan in place, the team quickly split into two groups. Michael and Sarah would operate the starship, while the others coordinated ground support. Lyra and Tarek gathered the Aelorian fighters, preparing them for the assault. As the cloaked starship moved stealthily through the chaos, Michael felt a sense of exhilaration mingled with fear. The stakes were higher than ever yet. He felt the weight of their collective resolve pushing him forward. They approached the Vornax flagship, its ominous silhouette dominating the battlefield. They could see the frantic movements of enemy crew members scrambling to respond to the onslaught from Aelorian forces. Once in position, Michael activated the ship's cloaking system, cutting through the chaos unseen. But as they neared the flagship, alarms suddenly blared through the vessel. A network of sensors had detected their presence. Michael's heart raced as he engaged the ship's evasive maneuvers. Sarah worked furiously at the controls as the Vornax flagship loomed ever closer. We have to act now, he shouted. With a deft touch, Sarah fired a series of precision strikes, targeting the flagship's propulsion systems. The ship shuddered as they made contact with a powerful explosion, sending shockwaves through the air. In the command center, Tarek's voice echoed over the comms as he coordinated the Aelorian fighters to take advantage of the chaos. Michael could hear the urgency in his tone. Now was their moment, Tarek shouted. Rally your forces, hit them hard. As the Aelorian fighters surged forward, the flagship's defenses faltered. Michael knew they needed to exploit this opportunity further. He glanced at Sarah, who was already working on deploying a secondary strike. As the flagship began to lose altitude, she managed to gain access to its systems. A glimmer of hope ignited within him. "We can disable their weapon systems," Sarah exclaimed, her fingers flying over the controls. "If we can disrupt their energy source, we can weaken their defenses." Michael nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they worked swiftly to execute the plan, with each second counting. They needed to act before the Vornax regained their footing. With a deep breath, Michael initiated the sequence. As the ship's systems hummed to life, the flagship shuddered once more, and then the energy readings began to drop. In the midst of the chaos, Tarek's voice cut through the static. "We are pushing forward now, do it." With a final surge of energy, Michael and Sarah launched a decisive strike that pierced the flagship's core, causing a brilliant explosion that lit up the sky. The flagship began to spiral out of control. Michael's heart soared as he realized they had achieved a crucial victory. As the Vornax ships faltered, the Aelorian fighters seized the opportunity to press their advantage. In that moment of triumph, the tide of battle began to turn as hope ignited across the battlefield. Michael felt a surge of elation mixed with disbelief. They had not only survived the onslaught, but struck a decisive blow against their enemies together, as one people united in purpose. Yet as they celebrated their small victory, Michael knew that this battle was far from over, and the true test of their newfound alliance awaited them beyond the flames of war. As the remnants of the Vornax flagship spiraled down into the depths of Aeloria's atmosphere, a chorus of cheers erupted among the Aelorian fighters, their spirits lifted by the unexpected turn of events. Yet Michael knew this victory was only the beginning. The Vornax would not retreat easily. In the command center, Lyra and Tarek stood at the forefront, rallying their respective factions, urging them to capitalize on their advantage. Michael watched as the two leaders bridged the gap between their peoples in a way he had never anticipated. The once adversarial dynamic had shifted into something more powerful as the delegates moved with newfound purpose. Aelorian ships regrouped and prepared for a coordinated assault against the remaining Vornax forces. Michael turned to Sarah, who was busy monitoring the ship's systems. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. She grinned, wiping the sweat from her brow. "We did it together." In that moment of triumph, Michael felt the true strength of their alliance, the way fear had transformed into hope, the way enemies had become allies united against a common threat. But amid the cheers and excitement, an urgent message crackled through the comms. It was Tarek, his voice grave, as he reported the remaining Vornax forces had begun to regroup. Their numbers were greater than anticipated, and they were preparing for a final push. Michael's heart sank at the news. They were far from safe, and the Vornax would not back down easily, but he also sensed an opportunity in this moment of vulnerability. Gathering the crew together in the command center, he laid out a new strategy. "We need to leverage our combined forces to draw them out into the open. We can't let them fight from a position of strength." Lyra listened intently and nodded, encouraging him to continue. "We can use the terrain to our advantage. The sprawling valleys and mountain ranges can serve as natural barriers." Tarek chimed in with a fierce determination. "Let's set traps, lure them into the open, and hit them hard when they least expect it." The crew rallied around the plan. Sarah and Zoe began mapping out key locations where they could set ambushes, while Marcus organized the ground troops, ensuring they were well positioned for the attack. As dusk fell over Aeloria, the landscape transformed into a battleground illuminated by the glow of distant fires and the flickering lights of ships. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as they awaited the Vornax's next move. Michael felt the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders, but also a sense of resolve. He could see the determination in his crew's eyes. They had come together in a way he had never imagined. When the Vornax finally advanced, it was with a brutal force their ships surged toward Eloria's heart, and as they entered the open terrain the trap was set. Michael signaled the ambush to commence. Elorian ships swooped down from the mountains, unleashing a torrent of fire on the unsuspecting Vornax. They were caught off guard. The sheer intensity of the attack sent shockwaves through their ranks. Amid the chaos, Michael coordinated the crew, ensuring that every maneuver counted. He felt a surge of adrenaline as he guided the Elorian fighters through the onslaught. But just as they began to gain ground, the Vornax regrouped. They unleashed a devastating counterattack, and Michael watched in horror as several Elorian ships were hit, their lights flickering before going dark. Tarek's voice came through the comms, filled with urgency. "We can't let them regain control. Push forward. We must break their lines." With a renewed determination, Michael rallied his crew, urging them to stay focused. Their combined strength had already proven formidable. They could not falter now. In the thick of battle, Michael felt the camaraderie of his crew. They moved as one, executing maneuvers, seamlessly supporting one another as they fought for their lives and for Eloria. As the battle raged on, the landscape became a blur of colors and sounds. Explosions lit up the sky, while shouts of both triumph and despair echoed in the chaos. But amid the noise, Michael caught a glimpse of Queen Lyra and Commander Tarek, leading the charge, their bravery inspiring the Elorian fighters, who surged forward with renewed vigor. The tide of battle began to shift once again as the Vornax forces struggled to maintain their footing under the relentless assault. Finally, it seemed victory was within reach. In that critical moment, Michael realized that this was more than just a fight for survival. It was a testament to the strength of unity and the bonds they had forged through struggle. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over the battlefield, he felt a surge of hope. They had come together against the odds, and now they stood on the precipice of something truly extraordinary. As the last echoes of battle filled the air, the smoke began to clear, revealing the aftermath of the fierce confrontation. The Vornax forces were in disarray, their ships disabled or retreating under the relentless assault of Elorian fighters. Michael felt a wave of relief wash over him, yet he remained acutely aware of the fragility of their victory. In the command center, cheers erupted as the crew celebrated their hard-fought success. But Michael knew the real work was just beginning. They had not only defended Eloria, but also forged a fragile alliance that needed nurturing in the aftermath of conflict. Lyra stood tall amidst the celebration, her regal demeanor commanding respect. She turned to Tarek and the other leaders as the initial excitement faded, her voice steady. "We have achieved a great victory today, but it is crucial that we use this moment to foster unity." Tarek nodded, his expression serious, while the remnants of anger and rivalry still simmered beneath the surface. He understood the importance of coming together. He addressed the gathered leaders. "Let us not allow our differences to resurface. We have a chance to build something greater." Michael watched the interactions unfold, feeling a mix of pride and responsibility. He had witnessed a transformation not only in the way the Elorians viewed each other, but also in the way they approached the future together. In the days that followed, the city of Eloria began to heal both physically and emotionally, as the Elorian people worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. The scars of battle were visible, but the determination to move forward was palpable. Michael and his crew took part in the rebuilding efforts alongside their newfound allies. They shared laughter, stories, and experiences, forging deeper connections that transcended their initial roles as diplomats and soldiers. Sarah worked on restoring the ship's systems, while Dr. Chen set up a medical tent to assist those injured during the battle. Emily helped coordinate supplies, making sure everyone had what they needed to recover. Michael often found himself walking through the vibrant streets, witnessing the resilience of the Elorian people. The way they came together to support one another filled him with hope. Queen Lyra and Commander Tarek worked closely to establish a council where representatives from each faction could voice their concerns and collaborate on solutions. The groundwork for a new alliance began to take shape. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, Michael found himself standing with Lyra on a balcony overlooking the bustling streets. She looked contemplative, her silver skin shimmering in the fading light. "You have brought us together in ways I never thought possible," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "Your bravery and conviction have ignited a spark of hope in our people." Michael felt a warmth in her words, realizing that their journey had changed not just the fate of Aloria, but also the course of humanity's place in the galaxy. He understood the profound impact of their shared experiences. Yet despite their victories, a lingering threat remained. The Vornax had not been entirely vanquished. Their presence still loomed in the background, and Michael knew they would need to remain vigilant. As they prepared for the next steps in their alliance, Michael gathered his crew once more in the command center. They reviewed their strategies and discussed potential threats. The Vornax would not remain idle. "We must be proactive," he urged. "We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions. We have the strength of unity. Now we must use it to forge a brighter future." As they strategized, Michael felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bonds they had formed through conflict had forged an unbreakable alliance, a testament to the power of collaboration in the face of adversity. In the weeks that followed, they worked tirelessly to strengthen their defenses, while also reaching out to other civilizations in the galaxy, sharing their story of unity and resilience. The mission that had begun as a simple diplomatic endeavor had transformed into a movement of hope, inspiring others to stand against division and conflict. As Michael stood on the balcony, once more watching the stars twinkle in the vast expanse above, he realized they were no longer just representatives of their worlds. They were pioneers of a new era, united in purpose, forging a path toward peace and understanding in a galaxy full of uncertainty. With a heart full of hope, he understood that their journey was far from over, but they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together, united as one people bound by a shared destiny in the cosmos.